me confused quite frequently. So it's our last session before we gather in July. I'm sure people are wrapping up their school activities, winning gigantic grants, things that come up in the everyday course of teachers' lives, submitting entries for competitions, things like that. So thanks again for taking your time to be here and for being part of the project. I had a few things to talk about today in our agenda. Hopefully you all got my message and know that I did get into your individual plans and offered notes and feedback there. Consider that the beginning of a conversation. Now I feel a little bit oriented to what everybody's interested in doing, what you've been thinking about, where you think opportunities are, so I can continue to be supportive and helpful in helping you achieve your own goals. But in our time today, I was just going to go back. I don't know how many people saw the joint announcement, joint statement from NCSS and the National Science Teachers Association and all the mathematics organizations and the like. We're going to talk about that and about data science as a core competency. We're going to talk, just for those, because I know there's some people who are struggling to kind of formulate a set of objectives for this fellowship. I'm going to go back and kind of review the criteria, and hopefully as you're looking at the feedback I provided on your plans so far, or if you're struggling to kind of advance your plans, this will be a helpful review and also kind of a reset before we get together in July. I'm going to use some of the same slides tonight that we're going to start with in July. So that'll establish some continuity. I will, if you haven't had time, maybe we could do a vote a little bit later in the meeting to see if you want to take 5 or 10 minutes to just flip over and look at the feedback that's in the individual plans, make sure you can access it, because sometimes I'm not so good at that. And then before we leave, we'll just talk about the kind of logistics for the summer workshop, and make sure that everybody has the info they need. Okay, so did I see some nods about having seen this joint announcement, joint statement? Jamie, yes. Anybody with any feedback? Like, did this make you think, yeah, that's needed, or that's a step too far, or I don't understand where that's coming from? Anybody with a reaction to it? No? Okay, well, I did. I had a thought about it. Oh, Michelle and Dara have their hands up. Excellent. You guys are so studious and waiting. Go ahead, Dara.
Yeah, it made me think about Jo Boaler's push for the new math framework and her work with data science. And part of me is wondering if that planted a seed for this to take shape, because it's I've been teaching data science for a couple of years now. I've just been kind of weaving it in, and it's because of her work that I've been doing that. And now this is really cool. I just have to say, it kind of affirms a lot of my gut feeling about what to teach and how to teach it. So
Okay, cool.
that's all.
Michelle, any thoughts?
Yeah, mine was really similar to Dara, of course. I was mostly thinking that it just makes sense. It like really draws students in. It feels like they're gonna see the real world associations and make those connections on their own, which is really exciting.
Very cool. Anybody feel disconnected from the phrase data science or the term data science? Or uncomfortable with it? No? But it's very cool, because I wonder, that was my first thought, is like this, it feels a little prescriptive in a way, because I don't know, and so it was really good to hear Dara saying I use a data science approach, because I wasn't really sure whether that that term would feel comfortable or familiar to teachers. So anyway, that's very cool. So I thought it was pretty useful and relevant to what we've been doing here with our integrating computer science project. And it got me thinking about kind of what it would look like to bring a kind of a data science mentality into education. And I'm often guilty of kind of imagining things from the ground up and not knowing enough about what other people are doing. So people like Dara and Michelle can fill in, and I'm sure others can help me understand the ways in which we are doing this. But in some ways, this seems like an opportunity to go back to an inquiry model of instruction and ask the question of kind of like, what if we align the way we teach with a comprehensive model for decision making in a complex world? So inquiry kind of talks about pursuing questions of relevance and interest. But ultimately, we also, when we think about citizenship as an outcome of education, we think about college and career trajectories. We think about our students making a difference in the world. We need them to make decisions, crucial decisions that will guide their actions. So we talk a lot about students taking action. I don't necessarily think we put as much attention on how they'll make decisions about what actions to take. And so I grabbed this graphic, and this is like a standard. If you did like a Google image search on data-driven decision making or data science, you would get a graphic like this from Forbes magazine pop up. And this is like a business way of thinking, and it's really a sales pitch about data driven processes. And I think in many cases, and I have a good friend who works in this field, there's an attempt to make business leaders fear the lack of data informatics, their lack of control over data, and to therefore sell them services that provide information from data. And in some ways, we can think of that as our students, and instead of, like our clients that we're going to give business consulting advice to, what if we equipped our students to make decisions in the same way, like critical action decisions about what they're going to do, where the way in which they're going to bend their future. So I just thought we could think about this model for a little while, and you could indulge me in some, mental exercise, because this got me thinking about the differences between data and information in this model, and in the kind of business analytics, business data analytics model. It's analysis is what's happening in that space, right? It's somebody that's analyzing data and turning it into kind of insights, is a word that's often used. So when we're taking actions in our everyday life, do people think that we're drawing on a lot of data to generate information, or what kinds of data or what kinds of sources of information are driving our actions normally? Like, can you think of like a contrast between things you do in everyday life where you do and don't draw on data to make a decision? Okay, I can't see if anybody's raising their hand, but you could just come off mute and talk. I'm a pretty analytical person. I think most of the time I'm operating off of information that doesn't have a lot of data behind it. And being of an age of a person who remembers making decisions and guiding my own actions before there was the internet to double check and add to my fact base, I really feel like there's been a shift in the opportunity to use data to drive information in lots of areas of life that I used to. Oh, okay. So here's Jeff. Now I'm seeing in the chat. So, right, test scores is an example where we do use data to maybe drive teaching practice, although I often think a lot of teachers use a lot of gut feeling about what students need and about what's going to be effective. But I absolutely agree that a lot of times our emotions drive actions, and our emotions are probably grounded more in our direct experience, our personal experiences, and stories that we've been told by trusted people, or that we've experienced kind of vicariously through effective media presentations. So oftentimes we arrive at these actionable insights using information that have a very, very thin foundation of data, I guess is what I'm getting at, right? And then in some cases, right, informal data, because it is data. It's not that that's not data. It's just a small data set, and it's maybe irregular or hard to classify data. But we use a lot of data that comes from, or a lot of information that comes from sources that we might not categorize as data. Okay, so one of the things, my insights about that is that kind of the data that has the greatest meaning to us, do you think it's more likely to be qualitative or quantitative? That's going to translate more readily into meaning. So a mix of both, they're saying. I tend to, so Jen's saying it depends. Michelle's saying quantitative. Blanca's saying quantitative. I think, and maybe I'm asking leading questions, but for me, the meaning comes from things that do have an emotional component or are scalable at an individual level. So yeah, of course it does depend. But I oftentimes think one of the reasons that we kind of don't utilize as much kind of quantitative or objective data as we could is because we feel comfortable with the data that we're getting. So there's that confirmation bias where you attract information that aligns with the ideas you have, the expectations you have, the understanding you have of the world. So oftentimes we're not feeling a big lack of data when we're making crucial decisions in our everyday life. And I'm talking about things, as simple as, buying groceries or deciding how to arrange your home or something like that. But so that there's a little bit of a tension between that meaning and then the second bullet point I have here about what's most reliable, right? So what data translates most reliably from its meaning from one person to another person to another person, or across big groups of people? I would argue that that's where the quantitative objective data is stronger because it has less interpretation. It has less of that personal emotional component in it. So when business leaders are trying to move to this pyramid model where they're accessing large volumes of data to generate information to drive their choices about what actions to make, I think they're trying to rewire a decision-making process that's been done in another way for a long time. And I think our students, we should understand, even though they may have grown up in a digital age, they're also learning how to make decisions and be a person with agency and choice. And oftentimes they're also going to be launching into an understanding of action based on information that hasn't gone through a big input of data. Is this making sense? Or maybe this is just things Tom thinks about that don't relate. So I'm like thinking about this and thinking that part of what we need to do is help our students kind of follow this pathway towards capability for data analytics, or that science of analyzing this objective data to not only guide their own actions, but to be the kind of person who can be a leader, who can be a coordinator, who can guide other people's actions, who can direct organizations to achieve things, right? So we want our students to have that ability to take raw data and analyze it. And I think this is what is often talked about as data science. And it's especially important to be able to deal with that raw, we could even call it numerical, or ones and zeros in the case of the way a computer experiences this information. It's important to be able to deal with that raw, empirical, objective data if we want to be able to apply models like predictive models to say when to expand a business versus when to be conservative and not expand a business, or when to follow a career path or when to choose a different career path, or things where we're trying to apply some understanding of a predictive model, right? So we need to be able to process lots of data to apply those models accurately. And then if we want to leverage computers, if we want to be able to use the computational speed and power of computers, we have to be able to understand those raw digits, those bits of data that we can feed to a computer and have it analyze. And now here's where we realize that it's not just quantitative, always objective numbers, because when we look at the world of AI, you can actually convert things like expressions to a data point. Did the person make a facial expression that indicated they were unhappy or happy? Yes or no. You can do that kind of thing to convert qualitative experiences, categorical things into data points. So everything can become a bit of data that can be processed. It's not just countable things or totally objective things. But I also think beyond data science, and this is kind of where I wanted to go with this conversation, is that in education, particularly if we think about kind of the precursors of where students are going to learn professional skills and deep subject area knowledge in college or in a career training program. What we really need to get our students through is a bridge of data literacy, where they understand how data can be used, how it can be leveraged, what's required in terms of the intellectual understanding of data so that the students can build models, and also then the use of computers, the manipulation of computers through coding, through use of software, things like that, to actually have computers manage data for us. But all of that data science doesn't actually generate an action without there being some human component, right? So on the opposite end of AI generating data from what people are doing, we have to think about how people then generate actionable thoughts, the motivation to do something from what is coming out of these data analyses. So I talked to a lot of people over the last few years who use the term science telling, and they are very interested in bridging from accurate, rigorous science to sense making out of that science so that people know, what do we do now that science has discovered X, Y, or Z, right? So as we're trying to bring our students along this pathway towards competency in data science, we should also think about the role that data literacy plays within that. So data literacy helps students start to think about questions that can be asked of data, how naturally occurring phenomenon that they experience, whether in the social world, in the physical world, in their own feelings, how that can be translated into and converted into data that can be analyzed and shared with other people or compared. So I really want us to be thinking about how we, in what we're doing here in this group, we're supporting this joint mission that these organizations would like teachers to take on. And it doesn't always have to look like data science in the sense of computational intensiveness or lots of bits of data going through. Helping students understand how to deconstruct the world into data points and then analyze those data points and reorganize them into insights to guide future actions is something that's going to be really powerful for them. And it's going to be powerful for them whether they want to influence decision makers, It's going to be powerful for them if they want to help their future employer achieve goals. It's going to be powerful for them if they want to project their own future life in a way that maximizes their opportunities. Okay, any questions or feedback about what I just said? I may have been working on my own grant proposal too long if that seemed like too abstract. Apologies. But my kind of reflecting on this statement made me think about the mission statement of Gapminder, which is a website I think I've promoted with folks before, and about what Gapminder kind of pushes at you is this idea that, like, go ahead, investigate the data, look at things empirically, and I bet you'll find out that what you think is true is not true, right? And so this idea that if we're making decisions based on personal experience, based on gut level intuition, based on a very limited stream of media messages or friends and social networks, we're likely arriving at conclusions that are very limited in their capacity to take in all the complexity of things. So Gapminder says, look, we've got all this data. You can straighten out your misconceptions. But also Gapminder helps by putting things in this category and kind of pointing us in the directions of things we care about. It's aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. These headings you see here aren't exactly what the Sustainable Development Goals are stated as, but they more or less align. And so we're going to do some exercises with Gapminder when we're together in San Diego and see if we can correct our misconceptions. I've played around with it and I'm irritated at how many misconceptions I reveal. But Gapminder is saying, look at all this data we have about the UN Sustainable Development Goals. But we also talk about this as an era of big data. And part of the reason that we really want to help our students become fluent in data, to become adept at thinking about and leveraging data, is because there's so much data available. It's the gold rush of the 21st century. There is so much value in the data that it's streaming off of everything, that to make sense of that data is to discover essentially a new logic to the world that can be very valuable. It can be crucial to bringing about a improved state of justice or health or economic success or sustainability. So this is a graphic that's actually I think this is like 5 years old now, that just talks about all of the data points that stream off of people using apps and computer facilitated communications, right? So big data is being generated all the time by people. I have a group of colleagues that mine tweets with location to discover very important things that require intervention. These things might be from outbreaks of infectious diseases to rebellion against national governments. And they are able to basically predict the future by mining what's happening in time and in a geographic context, and try and figure out what's kind of bubbling to the surface. NASA also does a lot to promote its big data approach. So NASA is blanketing the Earth all the time with satellite coverage that is using different kinds of receptors to essentially take pictures of the Earth. Not exactly pictures, because sometimes it's measuring oxygen content in the atmosphere, sometimes it's measuring temperature, all kinds of measurements that are giving us a very, very complete and accurate picture of our changing Earth environment in real time. I don't know if folks have ever used that Earth website, that's Earth Null School, that has all of the real-time data on winds and sea state and temperatures. It's fascinating. But that big data is another source that we can have to detect patterns that are happening. We're still relatively bad at predicting really well understood phenomena like extreme floods. So we're of course very, very challenged to understand a long-term change like carbon concentrated induced climate pattern change. Right? So we're just beginning to figure out that that's a thing that we should understand, but we're a long way from understanding it. So we've got all of this big data just collecting around us about the planet, but we need to make sense of it to make it guide us in a new direction. We also are, it's not just satellites from the sky, we've got people milling about collecting data, census takers and people filling out surveys and people completing online forms. So big data is coming about from explicit data collection systems, political polling, all kinds of different activities that generate data. So you see a graph here on this slide of the amount of data that the Census Bureau has available for research. You can see it just exploding after 2010 with digitized and computerized data collection and data management systems becoming the norm. So the friend I mentioned that's a vice president with Citibank, essentially his launch into the business world was mining census data for business insights to essentially tell you where to expand a particular business based on profiling the types of customers and understanding how to tease that information out of census. So that's the kind of thing that a business leader could see as actionable insights based on data analytics. Big data, this is actually out of order. This should have gone with the NASA slide, sorry about that, but just this gives you a sense of the massive increase and the accumulation of data about the surface of the Earth and about the vegetation, the water availability, all kinds of things about the Earth's surface. There's a little 1-minute video you can watch about the kind of purpose of Landsat program, and there's a big education effort to help people understand what the value of those images are and how we can use those to understand what's happening on the Earth. Besides satellites, we can also think about sensors. Some of you have probably seen my map of air quality conditions that we can pull up a very accurate air quality map of every part of the United States because of the extremely high number of air quality monitoring devices and sensors that are out reporting into the internet. But we can have more and more and more types of environmental sensors that detect something or report something. I don't know if any of you have a neighbor that's got a weather station that's connected to the internet. I have one, and you can go on and find out, you know, three doors down from me what the weather condition is. And all of that world of sensors is connected to the Internet of Things or to the cloud. And all of that data is, again, swirling around us, but it takes smart questions, and then it takes data science know-how to be able to convert it into insights and decision making. It's not just the data science know-how, it's the smart questions and the understanding of models and relationships in different parts of kind of the Earth's natural and human systems. So as geographers, we realize that it's not just big data. More and more data has a locational component. And that's because of the nature of the technology that has developed so that the devices that are streaming data all include a GPS track, a GPS signal that indicates where on the surface of the Earth they are. Now, that might occur through a census taker writing down the address at which they collected a survey, or it could be a person out taking invasive ivy off of redwoods and using a GPS to mark the location of the tree where they did the intervention. It could be all different kinds of things, but that it's not just the satellite data seeing the Earth differently or seeing it completely. It's the fact that all of these little pinpoints of data are appearing on the Earth's surface and revealing patterns in kind of human activity. I just saw a paper that one of my colleagues published that's all about identifying employment centers, just using a data processing approach, going through the census, looking at the surface of job availabilities in the different sectors that the industrial classification system uses, and then identifying essentially, was there a sales employment center in each city that they analyzed? Was there a technology or a programming employment center? Anything that the type of employment is tracked, they were able to identify whether there's a cluster of that type of employment that's apparent. Public health also makes big use of big data. So this is similar to what I was talking about with my colleague, but looking at whether they could actually predict a certain type of mortality rate through tweets that people had. Could they find correlation between the amount of conversation and discussion and posts about certain topics and the actual tracked and measured amount of mortality? And if they could, that means that they could respond to mortality outbreaks in places where they didn't have the same level of census data, they didn't have the same records. So they could go into a place where people had cellular technology, but no long-term records, health records, and kind of do some rapid detection and response. So all of this is about just kind of motivating us to think about what we're looking to do through our projects and through this fellowship is getting our students to this point where they can look at, in this quote, it says education and storytelling. I think I just, in my mind, changed that to data science and storytelling. Because you need people to have empathy to act, but you also need them to have confidence in what they're being told, right? They need to have confidence in the reality that they're acting on. And so with so much concern about misinformation and kind of gaslighting of people to generate information that controls them or produces a certain response that's in the interest of a business or a political entity, what we need to equip our students with is the ability to draw on data, undertake their own analyses, and confirm what they think are actionable insights for themselves. So out of all of that process will become not just like business decisions that are smart and make money, but people that are making personal commitments that are defendable, that they're engaging in the civic process in a way that makes an impact, and that they're choosing a career path with a realistic understanding of how they themselves can make an impact on the world in the future through that career path. Okay, so I'm coming back to this in July, so don't worry that was a lot all at once. What time are we at? 6:43. Took a while longer than I thought, but as you can tell, I've been doing some thoughts, thinking about where I want to be positioned related to this call for data science. I'm a qualitative researcher at heart, and so I want to give students the capacity to be as powerful as they can be, but I also know that data doesn't make decisions and data doesn't take actions. People make decisions and drive actions. So we need people to be understanding and controlling of the data science, not looking to the data science for solutions. Okay. Any questions or feedback or comments before we talk about this criteria? I'm realizing it might also be abstract because I was trying to get us to rethink. No, okay. All right. So once again, I'm doing some illustrating because I realized that as I was looking at plans that people had that a common kind of concern was what are what is this project looking for? What do I think is a good project within the scope of this fellowship? What am I hoping to see happen here? So this gets back to the conversation we were just having about what we're thinking about is how can we help our students use information in a systematic way to understand and make decisions in a complex world? So I just made the case about this huge volume of useful data, and that the computers are going to collect and manage it and crunch through it for us. But in order to solve real problems, we need people to have competence in both geographic and computational thinking. So we're trying to come up with some learning experiences that would hit that box and start boosting students' preparation to apply geographic and computational thinking when faced with all this data. So we're looking for something that has an explicit engagement with computational thinking, not necessarily with computers or with computer coding, but with computational thinking, with at least the kind of precursors that help us think about processing data the way a computer does. So students might be engaging with data types. They might be talking about data definition, what a measurement or an indicator is and why it's relevant. They might be talking about data collection, how to make it systematic so that it is reliable, so that other people will trust and see it as valuable. So that might involve sampling routines or a surveying or some kind of data retrieval, like we teach students about sourcing and citing sources when they're writing a paper, which is a data retrieval process. We want students to be thinking about data organization and management routines and tools, things like tables and graphs and spreadsheets or statistical software, but also it can be just a hand-drawn table or a color coding system, right? Something that helps them organize and manage different types of data. And then we want them to think about actually engaging in some data analytics, which could be as simple as just summarizing data set, making comparisons among two different sets of the same type of data or two different types of data from the same sources, right? So relating a person's location to their sense of well-being, or their sense of well-being of two groups of people in different locations, right? Those are ways we could kind of compare data across cases or within a case. And that's the stuff I'm talking about. That's computational thinking. But I am hoping that in each project and at a level that's appropriate given the grade and the subject they're engaged in, that students will be doing some of this explicit kind of teasing out management and identification of data, something that they'll call data. Okay, is that kind of clear about that one side of the box? Okay, so we'll move computational thinking to the other side, and then we'll just talk briefly about what it's like to also do an explicit engagement with geographic thinking. So there's really, I'm just trying to keep this simple about you're employing one or both of these perspectives. One is a spatial perspective where you're just paying special attention to location and area of interest, to locational characteristics or characteristics that can be tied to points in space. Those could be features like a place of significance to a tribe, or it could be the length of time that it's been under a certain ownership or that it's experienced some change process, right? So a spatial perspective just says within all that data, we're going to make sure to pay attention to how that data ties to location, how it tells us something about location. And then the other part of geographic thinking that you could be thinking about is relational. It's about how things connect through systems in space. So the relationships and interactions and systems that connect one place to another, or the characteristics or features or patterns that you see in one place to the characteristics, features, or patterns that you see in another place. So So in every project, we're looking to do these things explicitly. It doesn't mean that it's going to be the key feature, right? So maybe the project that you're interested in developing, where you see an opportunity for integrating some computational and geographic thinking, is a service learning project, or it's a writing project, or it's a group project, action research, right? It can be any of those kinds of things, but within it, some element wherein students are going to develop these kinds of ways of thinking about information, thinking about data points, and thinking about data points that can be organized in geographic space. Okay, so now one more dimension, whoops. And that third dimension, the third variable is really computer usage. And I just added this to make it explicit that there can be no computer usage to all of it is a coding project where students are learning to use a computer to do all of the data analysis, retrieval, manipulation, all of it, right? So if you're in a computer science course, you're clearly going to be wanting to make sure that students are utilizing computers and developing the skills that are involved in managing and analyzing data with computers. But if you're not in a classroom where you teach computer skills regularly, you can absolutely apply computational thinking by introducing students to computer programs that provide geographic information, or by doing things that make explicit the geographic characteristic of data and having them work with data types that that they can analyze and kind of deconstruct and put together to make sense. Okay, so every project is going to fit in this box somewhere, but they can be all over in this box, right? They can be lots of computational thinking and lots of computer usage and just some very basic geographic thinking. They can be mostly about geographic thinking with some minor forays into discussing and describing the types of data that are being used, right? The students don't have to be doing computer-assisted analysis of data. They just have to be thinking about data and thinking about geographic relationships and location. Okay, so that's what I was just saying about the medium, high, or low computer usage. All of it's fine. All of it's totally cool. We want to get in that box with the students and analyze the world through these geographic thinking and computational thinking skill sets. Okay. Are we good with that? I'm going to stop sharing for a second and grab the link to the folder that Blanca asked about. And I will look for hands raised or listen for comments. Okay, hearing none, I will drop the folder link here. Okay, that link has the individual forms that each of you have filled out. Everybody has that put something in the form should have gotten some feedback from me. I tried to put all the text in blue, so it was really easy for you to figure out what was me talking, because some of you might have put your information in there a couple months back and might not have looked at it for a while. So I did the thinking for what I just shared with you kind of as I was reading the plan content that you had. So I'm hoping that we can kind of focus on our time together in July as the time where we can kind of like finally crystallize what it will look like to implement the projects that we're doing. So I think everybody had some ideas. Some people had tons of ideas. Some people were exactly the way I am, where the ideation goes crazy and you find all these different places where you could insert computer science and geography, and that's fantastic. But we also need to kind of focus down to what's achievable within, within the resources and the time that you have available for this fellowship. So we want to make sure that we get to the point of implementing something to share with students and see what happens. I mean, ultimately, this is like a collective experiment where it's like, what happens if a bunch of teachers try to introduce computational and geographic thinking more explicitly into some activities. Oh, okay. I do that sometimes too. You resolve the comment and then it disappears. I think we can make it go back. Okay, so if you haven't had an opportunity to look before, now you've got the link. Now you can kind of see what I was thinking as you reviewed, as I reviewed. In some cases, I had some, like, if you were kind of zeroing in on an idea, I was able to kind of think a little down the line of that idea. In some cases, if you seem to be searching an idea, I have some suggestions. One thing I really would encourage anybody who is worried about the scope of this project, or who's really not, I want to discourage people from taking on an undefined project development cycle. Like, this is not turning you into a curriculum writer, research and development team to create new curriculum. If you've got that idea and it's clear to you and that's what you want to do, that's great. But also you can take some of the things that we've created with the CGA, whether it's the Atlas that we have, or some of the things I've shared, like that American Panorama Atlas of US history that's got these incredibly rich data presentations. And you could just create an activity to have your students kind of interact with and interpret and learn from a product like that already has the computational thinking and geographic thinking built into it. That's totally fine for you to think about the process that you would go through to scaffold and introduce that as a meaningful resource as part of a learning activity you would want your students to do, right? So don't think you just got to reinvent or invent something new. Thinking about connecting your students to an opportunity to learn something that will inspire and activate new kind of synapses in their brain would be great. Okay, anybody have, other than Blanca, who needs me to reinstate a comment that got resolved away, anybody have a specific comment or trouble getting to the comments that I put in there? Or question? When we get together in July, I'm going to make you all do all the talking. I'm not doing any time. Yeah.
I just want to say, Tom, I really appreciate, I just been going through all the resources and I feel a little bit reinvigorated. Just I found them incredibly helpful, and I appreciate all your time. You had a lot of great suggestions, and it's allowing me to kind of like pick a direction and stick with it a little bit more.
You're definitely on one end of the spectrum where I see your idea for what you want to do has been pretty clear and stable. And because we have prior experience working together through the global fellowship, I feel like it was easier for me to understand what you were looking to do and kind of contribute on my end, something that would help. So as other people pick and choose from their ideas to the thing that's really that they're really going to zero in on, then hopefully I can do the same for everybody, or at least something useful. That's my goal in life, is to be useful. Okay, so no questions about that. We can come back to that when we're all together. Right, so this was my abstraction, right, that I just wanted to kind of take away that form and just think of it as a guided visualization we're on, where we're here, we've been learning and we've started planning, we're continuing to learn, and we're thinking about creating something that's going to be possibly a resource, but maybe it's more like an event for your students, right? Maybe it's a activity that's going to happen, because ultimately we don't just want to rest with us as educators learning and thinking through this. We want to make this bleed down to the students at some point and pilot something. So just that, like Dara said, she was kind of reinvigorated about her idea by me thinking about it and sharing some ideas and suggestions. I think if the idea you have is motivating you to any degree now, at the time when you get students to interact with that idea and feedback about what they learned from it and what was worthwhile about it, that will hopefully motivate you to keep what's really good in that and to continue down the road of reflecting on what you've done and refining it, so that you have something to keep and share out of this experience that kind of is of benefit to yourself and to your students going forward. So don't let that create get too big. Think about select and adapt as just as appropriate as create there, right? So if you aren't sure, you know, that you have the ability or the time to create the thing that you'd really love to see now, that's okay. Maybe you could take a step back and select and adapt some resources that get you part of the way there. Okay, so we talked about that document. Now we're going to talk about the workshop. Look at us, kind of on time. It's what happens when I talk. Okay, some crucial information for, and I appreciate everybody's patience in working through the necessary process for travel arrangements. I'm sure some of you will have stories about inefficiencies or communication challenges. I use the same system to organize my travel for CJEP, so I know it's hard when there's more people involved in planning than just yourself. So I think we know that everybody who's traveling will arrive before 8 p.m. on Sunday. No, Jen's saying no. Okay. Is there anybody besides Jen who knows they won't arrive by 8?
I
Wait,
think
Thomas,
maybe
can you
8.
repeat that again? To do what?
Who will not arrive by 8 because check-in for the apartments is before 8. And so I think, I think we can make special arrangements and just Stephanie or I will get keys for people who aren't going to be there by 8. I just figured I should know.
Yeah, I'll send you an email because my flight has changed like 3 or 4 times. So I'm not exactly sure. They keep changing it on me all the time. So I will have to look at the most current, and then because they've sent me so many, and then send you an email and let you know.
Okay, definitely. So I've got a note about Jen, but if anybody else does not anticipate being there before 8, let me know, and so we'll make arrangements. One of us, either Stephanie or I, will be on site because, of course, there's always the possibility that somebody has a flight delay or something, and you planned on being there before 8, and then you don't get there before 8. So we'll have a way to make that work if people aren't there by 8. When you arrive, if you do arrive before 8, there's an opportunity for you to grab dinner there on campus. You're going to get meal cards, and so anytime that we didn't organize a group thing, you will just be able to go and get like a la carte choices at the dining hall there on campus. USD is kind of like if Marriott did campuses, so it's nicer than your average campus dining hall, but it is, you know, college food. So I've got a link here to a campus map and document a meeting guide just for our meeting that should have all the information you need. If I make new discoveries of things, I'll add them to the meeting guide. If you are not, not staying at USD, then there's information there about parking and how to find the building. Obviously, you can use the same campus map. Okay, so here's the schedule for the other 3 days. So every morning you'll be able to go on your own to eat breakfast using this meal card. I believe it's going to have $45 preloaded per day, which only should be kind of a challenge on Tuesday, because that's the 3 meals on campus. Monday, we'll meet and have a morning kind of orientation and greetings and see what we actually look like in person for those of us who haven't really met each other before. Each day we'll have an hour lunch break, so if you need to check email or check in with family at home, you should have a little time to be able to do that. And then on Monday afternoon, we'll have a work session, kind of all brainstorming together, advancing our own projects, working individually or in small groups, finding resources that we need. Monday night, we're gonna carpool and or Lyft or Uber to go down to Little Italy. I will do a field trip walking tour of Little Italy, and then we'll end up, maybe we'll get some espresso during the walk or some little snack, and then we'll end up with dinner in Little Italy. And then we'll just all go back to campus, or if people are local, they'll drive on home. Tuesday starts pretty much the same thing with a breakfast, a morning work session, lunch on your own, or, you know, take a lunch and go explore around campus, an afternoon work session. Then Tuesday night, I figured people maybe have had enough of me. You'll want to do dinner on your own. But if you want, we could coordinate to go after dinner and go do another like neighborhood walk or something and go out for a drink or an ice cream or something like that. Just for those people who are interested in doing something out and about in San Diego. Then on Wednesday, two important things. One is that after you eat breakfast, you'll want to check out and like take your luggage out of the room. And tentatively right now, I'm going to say bring it to the meeting room, but that's kind of a long walk. So what I think I will do, and I'll give you more information about this when we're together in San Diego, but I'll probably park a vehicle down there next to the apartment complex where everybody's going to be staying, so that you won't have to drag it across to breakfast and then across to the meeting room. I will transport over there. Anyway, Wednesday we'll have like a little mini conference where everybody will share where they're at with their project, what they're excited about, and what's next in their development. We'll wrap up kind of officially at noon. So if you're ready to go, you can just be on your way to catch a flight or get home, or you can hang out and you'll still have lunch covered on campus on Wednesday. So, but that's optional. You're not required to stay till 1. Okay, any questions about that itinerary, or gonna be the next time we see each other? Gonna be exciting.
Could I ask a quick question?
Yep.
So my flight gets in at like midnight, so how do we arrange so from the airport to we're finding our own Uber, or do you know is there a shuttle? How does that work?
So it's a very short distance. So if I would just take Uber or Lyft or a taxi, whichever you prefer, and we will cover that in your travel reimbursement. So there is no shuttle to campus. And by the way, I will send you an email with the link to the guide and some, just some reminders of crucial information, because on Sunday as you're arriving, you're not going to want to dig through that whole document, but like an address of the apartment complex and just steps for first arriving. So look out for that email early in July.
Hey, Tom, I need access to the meeting guide.
All right, I'm 0 for 2 on that tonight. We can fix that. This is a thing where I think that if I put it in a folder I've shared before, it's gonna get the same sharing, but it doesn't. Oh,
Thomas, do you have any recommendations? As I know the weather's really beautiful at that time in San Diego, like what should we take as far as, are we want to be comfortable? Do we have to take any formal wear for dinner? I mean,
no,
what do
no,
you recommend?
absolutely no formal wear. Pretty much t-shirts, shorts, things, cover yourself, be decent, but other than that, I don't care. Well, I will not take you anywhere
Thank
where
you.
you feel underdressed, no matter how you are dressed. Okay, so Yuko at 6:20. 6:20 should be it is like a 10-minute ride from the airport to USD. Even maybe add 5 minutes for where we've got a lot of construction and traffic generating construction at the airport, but it's a very short distance, so it won't take you long to get there. And also, if you're a non ride sharing person, there are cabs at the airport, and they'll get you there too. I try to support my local taxi drivers, but I find it's hard to get them to pick me up at home on time. So I tend to take a Lyft to the airport and a taxi home. Okay, so now I've shared the things you need. Lara will be cutting a little close at 7:32, but we will be there to safeguard against people being locked out. This is my first time using the housing facilities on campus, but Stephanie has some experience with it, and I'm sure we can work things out. 8 o'clock it's not like it's midnight. We can be there. All right, well, I'll hang out a few minutes in case anybody has any question or something you wanted to follow up with. Otherwise, like I said, look for an email from me. Keep thinking about your project, thinking about all the abstract weird things I shared with you tonight, and trying to figure out how that might help you find a path that's going to really be enjoyable for you and enlightening for your students, and come up with something, a cool experience or something to share and keep. Yeah, it's going to be fun. We'll have fun for sure, and we'll use our time productively, and we'll enjoy it. And you'll definitely, I can't guarantee I'm going to advance your thinking, computational thinking, but I will definitely make a promise to advance your geographic thinking while you're there exploring the city with me. Cool. Looking forward to it. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for your Tuesday evening. Okay, Michelle and Yuka on the same time. Excellent. All right, and if anything pops up, you have a problem or a question, just jump on the email and let me know, and we'll work it out individually. I can talk to Stephanie and Juliana as needed to iron things out. All right, good night, everybody.
Tom, I have a question about transportation